The second of two National Signing Days is less than 24 hours away and not necessarily what it used to be. We all know that, but could provide some intrigue and maybe a surprise signing or two. We will talk about that and Iowa's latest commit here in the last 48 hours right here at the Voice of College Football on our Iowa Live show. Corey Brad is on board, of course, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Please check out his work, football and basketball coverage of the Hawkeyes on From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Leave your comments and questions here. We're talking Iowa football for the next 60 minutes. Hey, Corey.
How are you, Mark?
I'm good. I am doing well.
Very good. Got a big day tomorrow. How big is this from a national perspective? Because, again, Iowa has we can talk about Deshaun Lee, and I know I talked about him on my channel. We'll release some information here on our channel tomorrow as well. But we talked about it back in December, how this signing day has lost so much of its luster. And I think it's unfortunate. We've talked about why, just putting pressure on athletes to sign early. What is it from a national perspective? Am I accurate in describing that?
Well, your comment about it putting pressure on the athletes, I just think there are so many different preferences and individual cases out there. And I think we've discussed it here where, based on the feedback that I've received in my attempted understanding why the change was that the athletes wanted to stop, and this is obviously a case-by-case basis, but wanted the process to be wrapped up sooner. For us that follow college football and cover it and try to do as much we can to follow breaking news and report and analyze and do all the things we do. We're right in the middle of it, mid-December, so it makes it more difficult on us. We've got plenty to talk about with postseason college football that to bring the recruiting angle, and we're at a point in which more than 90% of the players in FBS and Power 5 sign on December 15th or whatever that Wednesday is in the middle of the month. Yeah, the leftovers are here. The one trend that I have seen that not that I've put a metric to it, but I think is quite noticeable, and I'd be surprised if this wasn't the case, is that those programs that have had a coaching change
right,
have more work to do, and therefore this is more significant for them. There's still a small but still significant portion of the class left to be signed.
Yeah, and I'm happy for Deshaun Lee. We just had a discussion with him. We'll be releasing that on the From the Hawkeye of the Storm channel. Our interview with Deshaun Lee. We'll be releasing that tonight, actually, and then we'll kind of have a joint segment on this channel tomorrow, Mark. But I'm happy for him because he's a perfect example of somebody who just kind of took his time. But Iowa also kind of came after him late, it sounds like. So, my guess is if they had, he'd always been a big Iowa guy, even though he's from Michigan. Growing up, he was an Iowa fan. It's just kind of interesting. And he was a Michigan State fan as well. But it is sort of interesting for someone like that, how important the fact that you have two signing periods is. So although this day, again, in my opinion, has lost its flame a bit from a recruiting standpoint, I think it's just you think about being that young man who, had you not had that day in February, you might be playing at a Division II school or a FCS school, and changes a kid's life. Certainly coming to Iowa as a defensive back is nothing to bat your eyes at. That's kind of what I said to him yesterday. It's like, as a tight end or a defensive back, where would you rather go? I mean, in all reality, and we can argue, Mark, about, and I hope we do a show. I hope, we can do a show with your Miami guy and whoever else, and we can debate who tight end you is this offseason. It's going to be a great show. But I guess my point is, I don't know of any places that you'd rather go to develop as a tight end, and I don't know where you'd rather go to develop as a defensive back. So I'm just happy for him, and like I said, a really nice young man. Everybody in this class that I've spoken with, Mark, and I haven't spoken to everybody, but everybody's you can just tell high character kids, and I know that people say that all the time. Well, Kirk goes after high character kids. That's the truth. He really does. And so I give him a lot of credit. He's there's some things about Kirk that people complain about because he's stuck in his ways. Well, that's one thing he has been stuck in his ways, but it's a good thing. he really values high character and young individuals.
Yeah, and I know that that's a difficult line to draw in regards to trying to field a roster of 105 total players, something in that vicinity, 85 scholarship players, and to do it for decade after decade. You start with the football aspect of it. You're looking for talent, and you're looking for coachable talent, teachable talent, and obviously people run into issues, whether they are self-initiated or otherwise, and to try to make a call on that. I think that's a very worthwhile and valuable element to put into the recruiting process. Obviously, there's a risk involved, and then there's also just wanting to do the right thing from a coaching standpoint, and work with individuals that want to be coached and developed and progress and advance in life. But yeah.
Mark, there was a narrative around Iowa football back 2006, 7 in that range, where there was some off-field issues, legal issues, and you're going to have that when you're managing like 100 student athletes. You're going to have somebody that gets arrested for DUI here or there, and I'm not downplaying it, but it's just going to happen. Yeah. But Iowa hasn't had any off-season issues, or off. Why do I keep saying off-season? I guess I'm just obsessed with the off-season. They haven't had any off-the-field issues, really significant issues, in years. Yeah, Tristan Wirfs I think he had an OWI, and Josiah Meeman had the run in with the police. Of course, he transferred on this offseason to Florida International. But again, I respect Kirk for many reasons, and that's one of them.
4 of the top 50 players in the nation are not signed. So the December National Signing Day has taken 46 of the top 50, just to give a perspective on it. But there are 4 top 50 players still out there.
And for the record, I said it on my podcast, which again is going to be released later today. There may be a late flip tomorrow. I mean, it could be, you're looking at who Iowa has offered that hasn't committed. But you also need to look at guys who Iowa offered and have committed to other schools who did not sign in December. So that's the key. There could certainly be a flip or two. I don't have any reason to think that will happen, but there wasn't a lot of, I said this to Deshaun when I spoke with him, there was not a lot of, I hadn't heard anything really about Deshaun Lee. And he snuck into Iowa City sort of under the radar and left Hawkeye. So it's certainly possible. I think the defensive backfield, this class, Deshaun Lee just provides even more depth to that. This is the deepest as far as a defensive backfield recruiting class that I can remember. I mean, it's crazy. And then you think about the fact that Riley Moss is returning. And yes, you lose Matt Hankins, you lose Jack Kerner and Dane Belton. But I mean, Mark, listen to this list, and I know you'll know most of these guys. Xavier Wampa, of course, coming in as a 5-star. Riley Moss, defensive back of the year in the Big Ten. You've got 2-year starting safety Kayvon Merriweather returning. You've got Jamari Harris, who started much of the year because of injury. Terry Roberts, who he's a special teams star and will play. I think he's got a good chance of being the other starting corner. TJ Hall, who Don Patterson helped Iowa nab from California. Cohen and Tringer, who is a flip, I believe, from Central Michigan. Orlando Traders coming in. And then they have a couple guys who were walk-ons that, Quinn Schulte being one that played at safety this year. So I'm just not worried about safety at all. And I'm not worried about corner at all because you have maybe the best cornerbacks position coach in the country in Phil Parker. I think that's an argument you could make. And then you already have guys who are, I think Xavier Wampa, my guess is he's going to be sort of plug and play. I mean, he's just that good. And I expect him to, I don't know that I expect him to start right off the bat. That's not much of a Kirk Ferentz thing to start a true freshman game 1, but he will play a lot. And I think he's got an opportunity. I think it's going to be interesting to see who fills in for Dane Belton. Anybody has not, we've seen Iowa play freshmen on numerous occasions at that position. So like Deshaun Lee, I mean, we just saw him commit. We're going to see him sign tomorrow. He could play this fall. It's a position where Iowa is comfortable playing young guys if they need to. Certainly, you'd hope that Terry Roberts and Jamari Harris and Riley Moss stay healthy, but the reality of it is Iowa has problems keeping cornerbacks healthy, and that's probably just That's just probably a problem across the country. So, but who fills in for Dane Belton at cash? That's going to be an interesting battle, because I just don't know. Is it Cooper DeJean? He's another guy that I'm high on. He played a lot of corner late, filling in for a depleted defensive backfield. But I could see him maybe playing cash. Or is it Xavier Wampa? Is it a corner? Do you send Terry Roberts down there? I don't know. I just think it's going to be intriguing. And then Brandon Fernandez is another guy who is from the Michigan area, who I believe Deshaun Lee knows personally, who's on the depth chart, or on the roster, I should say, and has not cracked the depth chart, but he's not in the portal, so he's still there. It's just gonna be a terrific battle. And again, TJ Hall's there already, Mark, as is Xavier Wampa. So you have a lot of guys battling this spring.
Talking Iowa football with all of you each and every Tuesday night at 4:30 Central Time with Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So check out his work if you're not already subscribed, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, right here on YouTube for Iowa basketball and football coverage.
We're about 871 subscribers. I checked before we went on the air.
We have got to get to 1,000 from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Get on over there. Subscribe, please.
Crawling up. You know what that's like. And it seems like the Iowa channel, once we hit 1,000, I think now is it like 1,600 now? It's like once we hit 1,000, you don't even have to, and it grows. It's almost like an exponential growth once you hit that landmark. So it's pulling teeth to get to 1,000.
The last weekend of the regular season that obviously moved Iowa into the Big Ten championship game, I think we had this surge of like 350 or 400 in a day or two.
Never really slowed down. So appreciate all the support here on this channel, but both channels. So anyways, but yeah, and for anybody wondering, basketball season's in full swing, and I'm getting hyped for March Madness, Mark. We got 1 month until that, and then we're talking spring football. So it's kind of a sad time of year in some regards, because once football's over, I'm all in on basketball, and then before you know it, that's over, and we got this long stretch. But spring football and March Madness it's a great combination. So these next couple months are going to be fun.
I would be fascinated to hear a discussion between you and whomever else we would deem worthy of a tight end conversation. So whether that be Miami, got contributors from Notre Dame, Stanford, possibly. I don't know whom else. Those are the schools that come to mind.
Yeah,
that are in the. I would love to host a series of live streams with all the various contributors that would be viable in that discussion for the various positional units. That would be fascinating.
As I've said before, I think you got to throw Penn State in that mix. I think they're no question about it. They're with the likes of just Freiermuth and the guy down at Miami whose name escapes me, tall guy. Gesicki. Those two guys. I mean, those are two of the best tight ends in the NFL now. So I think Penn State's got to be in that mix for here recently. But boy,
best tight ends in the NFL.
Freiermuth
and Gesicki.
Gesicki stepped up big time this year. Yeah, as far as pass catching,
I'm not saying that they're not. I just wasn't aware that they were the two best tight ends.
No. I said two of the best tight ends.
Okay.
Excuse me. No.
Okay.
No, George Kittle and Travis Kelce, I would say, are probably still the two best tight ends. Would you agree with that? Travis Kelce and Kittle?
Yeah.
But no, Freiermuth and Gesicki really emerged. I still think Hawkinson, if he's not in Detroit, he's probably top 5. I don't know that he is top 5 right now. I mean, there's just so many problems in Detroit. It's just a depressing situation. I'm not a Lions fan, and I know this is an Iowa show, but can we talk a little bit about, just for a minute, can we just talk about the NFL playoffs? Because
absolutely. I just want to say one other thing about the possible live streams we could put together with positional debates, because I think it's fascinating. For some reason, defensive back seems to draw the most ire from fans, discussion, DBU, when talking positions. That's at least what I come across, and I think there are the most schools involved in that discussion. But that would be fascinating as well. You would have to let me know if you believe that Iowa could hold up in that discussion, so you could measure that one as well.
It's harder for me because it's just defensive backs. First of all, you've got safeties and you've got corners, and if you're going to clump them all together in one group, I think it's hard. I certainly think Iowa has to be in the conversation, right? I mean, like, I can't say that definitively because I'm not real well versed on where I know Florida's had a number of really successful corners over the years. I'm sure there's SEC schools that have a ton of guys in the league right now, but you look at Michael Ojemudia and Desmond King and Josh Jackson and Amani Hooker and Geno Stone. And I mean, you go down the list, there's a lot of guys out there who played at Iowa. So
Yes,
certainly think it's a possibility. I mean, I have no reason to think that Matt Hankins won't be. I think Hankins will, I know we'll probably talk about the draft here in a couple months, Mark, or even sooner. But I think Hankins and Kerner have a shot. I don't know. I mean, Kerner's a bit undersized, but as we've talked about, an undersized safety at Iowa doesn't always mean much because they discipline, and certainly Kerner is an excellent open field tackler. Yeah, I think Iowa would be in the mix. No question about it.
Okay. I never really considered Iowa to be, and I'm not debating that, but certainly I've considered them a top 10 secondary producing school, defensive back producing school. But
well, and correct me if I'm wrong, you looked up the data points, I think, on this a couple of weeks ago. Iowa had they were top 5 in the country for most active players on NFL rosters. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
And I think they're right there in the playoffs. So it's pretty balanced throughout the NFL. And so I guess we should throw that out there too, Mark. Riley Reif for the Bengals has an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. And who am I missing for Cincinnati? Mike Daniels, former Packer. Talk about a guy who kind of came out of nowhere. He was good at college, but boy, he really landed on the scene hard in Green Bay. So those two guys have an opportunity. And then, of course, for the Rams, Jake Gervais, I believe, is on the active roster, safety. So he's another defensive back that hadn't thought of. And then Alaric Jackson, left tackle, who I don't believe is starting, but I believe he's active. So, yeah, you win either way. It seems like every year Iowa, somebody from Iowa takes home the trophy, and should be a great. Are you happy with the matchup, Mark?
I'm okay with the matchup. I didn't have real rooting interest on Sunday, especially in the Rams 49ers. I was more pulling for the Bengals, not anything against the Chiefs, but they've been to their 2 Super Bowls recently. So I was leaning Bengals. The second game, I was completely just watching to watch football.
Well, Mark, can I just say something? I don't think San Francisco is a good football team. Let me just.
I don't think they're a good football team.
I don't think they're a very good football team. No, I just don't.
I think they're really good. I think they've got a bad quarterback.
Well, when you have a bad quarterback, Mark, we go back to Iowa. Stellar defense, stellar special teams. And yeah, I know the quarterback's not the only issue, but I mean that's the most important position on the field. And you're right. Garoppolo looked like Petrus at times. He looked like Petrus. You had no confidence that he was going to lead them down the field in that final drive. No confidence whatsoever. And I think Kyle Shanahan's a very good coach. Let me just establish that. But they've stuck with Garoppolo far too long. And first of all, defense played their tails off the entire. I mean, it's incredible what they did against Green Bay. To me, now Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, those two guys, who else do they have as far as weapons? Who else is a weapon?
Those are the 2 weapons. I don't know that many teams have 5, 6 weapons. I think most teams really rely on 2 or 3 guys. I think that's pretty typical. The thing that I'll say about San Francisco, though, if you're talking about what they have to do between where they stand right now and elite, which let's understand that they could very easily be in the Super Bowl right now. They didn't go out there and lose by 5 touchdowns in the NFC Championship game. The game went right down to the wire, and they need to replace the quarterback. And I didn't think Garoppolo I would not have rated him as a poor quarterback before this season. That aside, they just have to fix the one position, as opposed to, let's say they had a quarterback who was carrying them, one of the 3 or 4 best, then they'd have a lot of issues. They don't have many. They've got a tremendous defense. and a
Well,
functional, more than functional offense. Who knows how good their offense would be with a better quarterback?
so you said, well, most teams don't have more than two weapons. And look at Green Bay. Now, I know they lost. And first of all, I was thrilled that Green Bay lost. And for the record, I was
pulling for Green Bay.
I
That was
figured
the only team I was rooting for in the playoffs was Green Bay.
Well, I understand you have a man crush on Aaron Rodgers. I
like Aaron Rodgers.
I know you do. And I don't like Aaron Rodgers, for the record. I really don't.
And see, let me just clarify something, because some people may read some kind of political slant into that. I am at a place in my life where I'm a Browns fan. Technically, they don't have my heart. I really don't care. I love the NFL. I love watching the NFL. And when people ask me about favorite players, I have ceased to have favorite players for years and years. And I have no emotional attachment to anything going on out there. The Aaron Rodgers thing, way before any kind of social stance that he took or anything, I just like to watch him play. And I think it's kind of funny how sarcastic he's been with the media through the years, and just and so it has nothing to do with what's happened recently.
And for the record, what happened recently, I'm not commenting on that. I'm commenting I've never liked Rodgers before that ever happened. So for the record, I guess my big issue with Rodgers is if the Niners were able to get it done, and I know special teams collapse, I get it. But it seems like there's a different excuse every year, Mark. Every single year, right? So is Green Bay just a franchise that's just kind of a crap franchise that just can't win in the playoffs because of organizational issues? And I mean, because listen, Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, Aaron Donald, those are three really top tier weapons. Okay.
Donald.
What did I say? Aaron Donald. No, not Aaron Donald. Not Aaron Donald of the Rams.
Are you talking about the running back?
Yeah. Who am I thinking of?
Aaron, I can't think of his last name. Now I'm having a brain freeze, but I know you're thinking of the running back, number 30.
Aaron Donald wreaked havoc on Garoppolo late in that game on Sunday. Can I say that? Is that fair? But yeah, I can't think of the Packer running back. Somebody will
throw it in the
Aaron Jones. Jones. Thank you, Jermaine. Appreciate that.
Standard last name. Yes. Yeah. Aaron Jones.
He's one of the best running backs in the league, Mark. And Devontae Adams is one of the best receivers in the league. And they scored how many points against San Francisco?
Okay.
So, I mean, at some point, I'm just saying, is it not Rodgers? Because we judge Dan Marino based on the lack of Super Bowl titles. So I'm okay with saying that he is, like, I'm not trying to say he's not an extremely talented quarterback. He's won a Super Bowl, for the record. So you give him that. Yeah. I was a huge Mavs fan, and Dirk Nowitzki won one title, but it's different in basketball. When you're football, the onus is placed on quarterback. That's why we view Tom Brady as the GOAT. He's won how many championships?
Actually, I understand what you're saying about putting all this responsibility on the quarterback versus what goes on in basketball.
In the NFL.
Actually, that narrative should be switched. A basketball player has so much more control over. A great basketball player is one of 5 on the floor. He can handle the ball constantly, has much more control over the game than a quarterback does.
However, in the NBA, you need multiple pieces, right? So
you need multiple pieces playing any sport. Nobody can win a team sport.
Let's recall, and we can have this debate, Mark. I'm happy to have this debate, but let's recall Tom Brady won how many Super Bowls with New England with average skill position players minus Randy Moss?
And so was Aaron Rodgers. They've never drafted a first-round wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers or a first-round skill position player for Aaron Rodgers ever.
So Devontae Adams is not a top 5 receiver.
I didn't say he wasn't, but they've never gone out and acquired top-notch players for Aaron Rodgers.
Skill position
through the draft at the skill position.
Why does that matter, though? Why does it matter if they went after him in the draft? They've developed them. They've acquired them. Aaron Jones is a top 5 running back. Devontae Adams is a top 5 wide receiver. I mean,
Tom Brady. I'll just make this statement. I don't know if we want to continue this conversation. Maybe we do. I will be in the minority, in a small minority, because I think there's a clear distinction between being the most accomplished player at a position and being the best. Tom Brady, if he would have been drafted by the Detroit Lions isn't winning Super Bowls. He's probably going to lift that franchise to 8 or 9 wins, which would have been incredible and would have been significant, but it's a football team. And, this last year, just look at their Super Bowl run last year. The guy threw 3 interceptions in the NFC Championship game. Aaron Rodgers played circles around Tom Brady in last year's NFC Championship game, but he didn't get the support that Tom Brady did by his teammates. He played a better game. It wasn't even comparable. Brady didn't play well, but they stacked the deck for him. When they acquired him, they acquired an all-star team, and they won the Super Bowl. And why he wins the Super Bowl MVP when he's not the best player on the field? They win it because they held Pat Mahomes to 9 points. That's the MVP of the team in the Super Bowl game is the defense.
Tom
Brady's great. There's what he's done is remarkable.
The fault I see in your argument, Mark, and I have no problem debating this. It's a friendly debate here, but my problem with your argument is, let's not compare the Green Bay Packers to the Detroit Lions. You can't say that Aaron Rodgers was drafted by a Detroit Lion-esque franchise. He was not. He inherited a franchise that had enormous success under Brett Favre, and he learned behind Brett Favre. So regardless if they've drafted top-notch skill position players, he's had top-notch skill position players.
They've had similar success under Aaron Rodgers than they had under Brett Favre. They probably had a better win-loss record. I can about guarantee that.
Well, but I'm not comparing the Packer era with Favre and the Packer era with Rodgers. I'm saying you're bringing in the Lions and saying if Brady was with the Lions that he wouldn't have won Super Bowls. Rodgers wouldn't have either.
Absolutely. I'm not making that statement to make a comparison between Rodgers and Brady. I'm making that statement to talk about football as a team game.
I understand. Yeah.
And that nobody can win by themselves, and that Tom Brady had to be he played in the worst division in football his entire career. It's not even comparable. That they may have had
the Jets were a year or two, and the Bills were good a year or two.
The Jets were, Bills, I guess. If you look to any other division over the last 20 years in the NFL, there were peaks of just elite play, whether that's the Giants in the NFC East and the Eagles, or that's the Steelers and the Ravens. And you go to any other division and the Patriots would have had to contend with good teams. They never had to do that.
What does that have to do with what does that have to do with playoff results though, Mark? We're not talking about that.
They get you a bye. They get you a consistent bye when you play a weak schedule.
Okay, well, the Packers got a bye this year and lost. I know it's anecdotal evidence, but I'm just saying, I give them credit. First of all, they had. I want to make it clear, I'm not doubting Aaron Rodgers' skill level. First of all, I don't believe Aaron Rodgers played very well. Also, in this latest game, I thought he missed some throws.
Oh, he didn't play great. He played pretty well. He played better than Garoppolo, and he played better than the quarterbacks we saw on Sunday. Some of them. He hit on like 25 passes. He didn't play a great game, but he didn't play poorly.
Well, how many of his completions were to Aaron Jones out of the backfield? A lot. Or at least targets, I should say. I don't know how many completions, but if he'd only had 4 incomplete passes or whatever he said, I think 20 of their 24 targets were to Jones or Adams. So that might be coaching. LaFleur, you got to look in the mirror, because where is Alan Lazard? Where are your tight ends? I understand that what's his face Tanyan is out, right, or was out for that game. Again, I have no problem with the other side of this. I've known a lot of Green Bay fans over the years. And so, Mark, when you know people of a certain fan base, you form an opinion for or against a certain team.
He's one of the 3 or 4 greatest quarterbacks in history.
I don't agree with that. I don't
from
agree
a
with that.
From a passing from a sheer skill standpoint, he's arguably the greatest quarterback of all time.
So Brady is ahead of him clearly. Okay.
From an accomplishment standpoint, Brady's ahead of him. I don't know if he's a better player.
Well, we disagree. We disagree on how we're rating quarterbacks. Player. You put less. Listen, I understand the position of acknowledging skill level individually, but ultimately it is a team sport, and the quarterback is the most important position on that team. So he takes the cake for team. He like it or not, he takes a great deal of responsibility when that team wins or loses, right?
Well, I've always taken this slant toward these kind of arguments, that I don't care what the group think or the way we're supposed to think of these things. I'm trying to cut through that to what I believe is fair and what is the truth. Or else we just say Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls. He's the greatest of all time. End of discussion. That's it. And for some people, that's fine. And I understand that. I know I'm fighting an uphill battle. And I'm not saying he's not the greatest of all time. I'm just saying I don't know if he is. And based on my eyes in watching quarterback play for 40 some years, I don't quite think he is the greatest at his position of all time. He's the most accomplished.
There's and no for the record, I see the comment in here that somebody upset that I use the word sucks. I just don't like Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, I acknowledge that
he doesn't suck. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
I understand, and he's probably in my top 5. I honestly think Josh Allen has an opportunity to take this league by storm. He may have already done that, as does Joe Burrow, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But again, I would, and this is going to be the last thing when we get back to college football. I would put Tom Brady ahead of Aaron Rodgers. I'd put Joe Montana ahead of Aaron Rodgers. I'd put John Elway ahead of him. I'd put Dan Marino ahead of him. Maybe he is in the discussion after that, but
So you're basing that on what? Like when you throw out Elway, statistically, Rodgers is so far superior to Elway. Elway got to more Super Bowls. He also, you talk about playing poorly in Super Bowls, then John Elway's your guy.
How many Super Bowls does John Elway have?
He played in 5. He won 2.
So, again, I'm just going by how we rate professional athletes. And even if you want to make the comparison to basketball, what do we rank LeBron versus Michael in? It's based off championships, whether it's right or wrong.
Well,
so if Aaron Rodgers goes
Corey,
and wins,
that's my point. I understand what the narrative is, right or wrong, but that doesn't mean as much to me. Like, I believe LeBron James is a better basketball player than Michael Jordan. He hasn't won as many championships. Well, I was having this, I did a live stream when Brady retired, or when other people announced his retirement before he made it official. And we had this argument for hours. And people, if you want to play that game of championships, then Yogi Berra is the greatest baseball player of all time, and Bill Russell is the greatest basketball player of all time. And if you're okay with that, then that's
no, but there's greater emphasis on one or the other. I'm not saying it's just exclusively one or the other. I mean, like Corey Brewer went and won a title with the Mavs, and I think he won a title with the Cavs or something. That doesn't make it. I mean, we're talking about a combination of factors, and we're basically giving levels of importance to each category. I understand. Listen, I don't like Rodgers. I acknowledge he's very talented. I don't believe he's the best NFL quarterback right now, or even close to being best NFL quarterback of all time. If you were to, and again, I know he's older too, so that does play a factor in my mind. If I was to want to build a franchise around someone right now, I would rather build it around Josh Allen. And I know maybe those are apples to oranges, but what Josh Allen brings to the field is incredible. I mean, he just played incredibly well. And in a losing effort, again, we can talk about NFL overtime rules and whatnot, but I've just never liked Aaron Rodgers. I know you really like Aaron Rodgers, and see, I would argue Michael Jordan instead of LeBron James, so I'm kind of the opposite in that regard as well.
My son asked me the other night while we were watching these games, because he knew about Deflategate and he knew about the Patriots cheating before their Super Bowl game against the Rams, and what Tom Brady had to do with the latter, I don't know. But he was like, seriously, the Patriots, yeah. And we, started to discuss it because he was not around for the Patriots-Rams Super Bowl. And I said, yeah, they spied on the Rams. They took video film of the Rams practices. My son could not believe that wasn't dealt with harshly. He said, what'd they get for a penalty? I said, they lost a couple draft picks. He's like, are you serious? They cheated.
And for the record, I am not a Tom Brady fan. I don't want anybody to think I'm a Tom Brady fan. I'm not a fan of any professional franchise. I watch a lot of NFL football. So I see Andy's comment in here that I need to stick to college football because I know nothing about the NFL. That's fine. If you want to believe that. But no, I'm not saying I'm an expert on the NFL, but I've been watching pro football my entire life. So I just don't like Aaron Rodgers. Part of why I don't like Aaron Rodgers is I know this gets under people's skin because I say the same thing about LeBron James. I know somebody who lived in Cleveland for a long time and had contact with through the grapevine had contact with LeBron James, and I just know some things about him personally that I won't repeat because people get really up in arms if you attack their guy. But Aaron Rodgers, I watch him in interviews, and you mentioned how he doesn't treat the media poorly. I'm not claiming that. I just think that there's a lot. I know there are a lot of Green Bay fans that worship Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, of course.
And I'm sure there's New England fans that worship Tom Brady or did.
Absolutely.
I get it. I'm closer to that. I've had more exposure to Packer fans who worship Aaron Rodgers.
I live in New England.
What's that?
I've lived in New England for 22 years.
So you kind of have the opposite end of the spectrum. And and I just can't. I get tired of watching Aaron Rodgers on TV, on every State Farm commercial that comes across the television. So, anyways, let's get back to the Hawks.
You must really hate Peyton Manning.
See, Peyton would be. That's another guy we didn't bring up. He'd be in the conversation as well for top 5 or 6 greatest of all time. Let's get back to the Hawks, Mark.
Yes, absolutely. So what's on your mind?
Okay, so Deshaun Lee's signing tomorrow, right? Yeah. We talked about that. Obviously, the Caleb Williams to USC news. I guess we can bring that up. I got ripped this week because we cut up a segment of our show from last week, Mark, and somebody showed this to me earlier. I got ripped because we answered one of our listeners' questions regarding why can't Iowa attract a top-tier quarterback, specifically in the portal. But somebody messaged me, sent me this email, and wanted me to ask Don Patterson. So, Mark, you weren't able to join us last week, so I called in to Don, and maybe you heard part of it. Called in to Don, and Don gave us 15, 20 minutes more of his time, which was gracious of him, and he answered every one of this guy's questions. And I got ripped for it because I'm beating a dead horse. I'm just beating that horse into the ground, Mark. I'm just trying to answer, but people asking the questions. I don't want to talk about quarterback anymore. I'm tired of talking about it. But if somebody asks a question, what else am I going to do? So the question was, should Iowa, first of all, could an athlete reach out to Iowa first? The answer to that question is yes, they could. But should they? No, the onus is on a school. So I give big kudos to Wisconsin. And yes, you can say it's the Bobby Ingram connection, whatever. I give them tons of credit because they are what Iowa wants to be. Okay. Wisconsin is what Iowa wants to be. And if you say that's not true, I don't know how you could make that argument because they play the way Iowa wants to play. The quarterback does exactly what Iowa wants its quarterbacks to do. And yet they were not afraid to go get Russell Wilson. And they were obviously not afraid to go get a guy like Caleb Williams. And Mark, could we maybe acknowledge that perhaps the gap between how Mertz played and how Petrus played this year was probably not that significant? The numbers would say Mertz might have been a tad bit better. Neither guy was great. And, Mertz is a former 5-star, so I guess you could make the argument that he's got more upside. But I guess I'm just saying it would have been nice had Iowa went to Caleb Williams or JT Daniels, because even though you may not get those guys, like Wisconsin didn't land Caleb Williams, I don't think Mertz is going anywhere. I mean, I would be shocked if he does. And if he does, he does. But, Mark, quarterbacks aren't going to leave the starting position at a marquee school like Wisconsin because, they don't love me anymore, Mark. They went after Caleb. That's not how that works, Mark. You and I both know that's how it works. And by the way, folks, had Caleb Williams went to Wisconsin and Mertz entered the portal, I'd have been pining for Iowa to go after Mertz. Mark, would that have been wrong of me? First of all, they recruited and offered him at a high school. He's a 5-star kid. And he was a little bit better than what Iowa gave. And the numbers would say he was better than what Iowa was able to accomplish. And we've seen flashes of Graham Mertz. Now, they've been short-lived. Of course, we go back to the Illinois game in 2020. It's a flash of greatness, right, against a pretty bad Illinois team.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe your thoughts on this, because people are tired of hearing me talk about it.
For those people that think we're beating a dead horse, so it's the off season and the transfer portal is humming, and Iowa is deficient on offense. That can't be argued. If your criteria for effective, efficient, explosive, productive offensive play is ranking somewhere between 90 and 105 in every measurable on offense, then okay, then that's your standard. But to be significantly better on offense, I think the quarterback position should be addressed. Now, if they go into next season with Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla as their quarterbacks, and it looks like that's going to be the case, then they will probably get the same level of production that they have out of Spencer Petras in particular for what, 6-2, 10-4. We're looking at and I know he didn't play every game. Padilla got in there a little bit, but we're talking about a 22-game resume. So it's pretty substantial. We know who Spencer Petras is.
Yeah, and Mark, we know that traditionally under Kirk Ferentz, quarterbacks don't really improve all that much. If they do, it's very slightly over the years. And there are some data points that you could throw out there, Mark, that say that sometimes quarterbacks regress. So let's not sit here and act like again, I've heard people say, well, look what Tony Rasiopi did with Kenny Pickett and what he was able to develop with Pickett. Well, as I understand, and I'm forgetting the guy's name, but the quarterback's coach at Pitt also was Big Ben Roethlisberger's quarterback's coach early in his career.
Mark Whipple.
There you go. I'd probably say I think it's fair to say he's probably one of the better quarterbacks coaches in the country. Would you say that, Mark?
That's his reputation.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's not act like, well, Tony Rasiopi made Kenny Pickett a Heisman finalist. I'm not going to go that far. Did he have a role? He's a private coach, possibly. But I need to see more from Ken O'Keefe. It's on Ken O'Keefe, Mark. If Ken O'Keefe, and I'll say this now, okay, and I have not said it since the end of the season, okay, and maybe I'll get gripe for it, but it's just the truth. If Ken O'Keefe and the quarterback position does not improve, especially with a 4-star and Carson May coming in and Marco Lainez coming in 2023, I don't know that you wait that long, but if it doesn't improve significantly this offseason, it's time to part ways with Ken O'Keefe. It's time to part ways with him. What are we getting out of $650,000 a year? Giving that to Ken O'Keefe to be your quarterback's coach. And again, I have nothing against Kenny. I don't know Ken personally. From everything I've heard, he's a nice guy. But it's time to part ways with him if we can't develop quarterbacks better. Okay. Do I believe Iowa will? No, because he's good friends with Kirk Ferentz. I hope that Ken O'Keefe does figure it out. Maybe Carson May will come in here and be, when does that ever happen as a true freshman that didn't come in for spring? It's not going to happen. Maybe it's Joey Labus. I know people are putting their faith in him. But if this is on Ken O'Keefe, Brian Ferentz, and Kirk Ferentz, and as you know, Mark, it starts from the top down. And right now it's clear to me that Gary Barta and the administration is not concerned about the issue. They probably wouldn't have picked the time to extend Ferentz until 2029 that they did. So the onus has to be on Kirk. And again, I know it's his friend. I know it's his buddy. But quarterback development is not where it needs to be. So that's what I would look like to start. And I could say the same thing about offensive line. How long do you give George Barnett? Offensive line play was pretty bad this year. He was just hired last summer. So I'm not saying you fire him after year 2. But Mark, if he's clearly not a fit, do you just continue with that experiment with a quarterback in Spencer Petras who's not mobile? I think that's just, to me, that'd be foolish. So I think you have to have everything on the table right now. And would I talk about Brian Ferentz being let go if it wasn't Kirk's son? Absolutely, I would. But there's no point in having the discussion, Mark, because he's not going to be let go. Kirk Ferentz is not going to fire Brian Ferentz. And I'm not necessarily saying he should, but I'm saying I'm not going to talk about it because it's not going to happen. I don't think Ken O'Keefe will be. I think there's a greater chance Ken O'Keefe could be let go. He's older. It would be easy to say, hey, Ken, look, this isn't working. Perhaps it's time that we're going to give you an opportunity to resign or retire. And it would be a lot easier than figuring out a way to get Brian to leave. The only way I could see Brian leaving would be if Kirk Ferentz was able to find another job somewhere else for him. He doesn't have the resume to go out there and do it on his own, Mark. He just doesn't.
I don't understand the thought process of a father making this decision to make it what has been termed in our chat and in other comments to the channel a family-run business, because I liken it in some respects to what happened in Miami a few years ago with Mark Richt, who had tremendous success at Georgia, was hired at Miami, got off to a great start. They won 9 games, then they won 10. The next year, they went to an ACC championship game. He had a top 10 recruiting class. His son was the quarterbacks coach, and most people agreed that he did not have the track record to hold that position. And I would think with Mark Richt, Kirk Ferentz, that you would have so much pull across the nation, so many contacts, that you could pick up the phone and say, hey, my son has done X, Y, and Z. I recommend him. You could get him a job somewhere and he could go find his own way. And you've helped him. You've helped initiate his career, and then he could take it from there. But I wouldn't want the potential optics and the potential issues of having my son be in that position under me, in a public position where everybody sees your performance. You're not running an insurance company. You're graded by wins and losses and the productivity on the field, and everyone, for the 80,000 in the stadium and for the millions watching on TV every Saturday, to have that be an issue potentially. And it is, because the offense is not good.
Absolutely. And for the record, I do believe Iowa is a quarterback away and some coaching changes. I'm not saying necessarily firings, but changes away from being a Big Ten title contender in 2022, despite the schedule. That's how, like I keep saying, they're not winning 10 games. They're going to have a hard time winning the West. I still think because of the way I like what the Big Ten did, because the schedules in the Big Ten West with the contenders or perceived contenders are actually very balanced, Mark. If you looked at them, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Purdue, and Iowa, they're all tough. Crossover games are tough. But I just look at this and I think you improve quarterback play, whether that be with Petrus or Padilla. So maybe it's development or maybe it's personnel. But if you improve that, that's a big if. If you do that, and I think if you change some of your offensive philosophy, I've been saying for weeks now, I believe that they have the pieces on the offensive line to be really good. We kept bringing up how they played well against Kentucky up front. I don't know how much we read into that because Kentucky was down a number of defensive run stoppers. So that's a factor as well. But I just look at it and I think Iowa's close, but we got it. You can't get in your own way. And I think Iowa keeps getting in its own way because, unfortunately, when you have a situation where it is a family affair or friends and family affair, you have loyalties that unfortunately go beyond what your job is, which is to win football games and win championships. And I think Iowa's got a good chance to win 8 or 9 games next year with who they have. I don't think Iowa has a good chance at all at winning 10 games in the regular season. But if a couple of those changes are addressed this offseason, which I have no reason to believe they will be, unfortunately, not to sound negative, but I just don't think they will be, given exactly what we're talking about here. There's going to be a ceiling on success in 2022. So, yeah, and we'll see. I mean, if Petrus were to win the job this spring, and I doubt Kirk makes that clear to his quarterbacks that Spencer's our guy. But if he were to win the job and Alex transfers out, I think it'll be intriguing to see what Iowa does. Do they just stick with who they've got and say, look, we've got Carson May coming in the spring, and we've got a couple, Connor Kapusak's a walk-on. Sounds like Iowa's in on a walk-on from the East Coast that Penn State's also in on that could end up being a non-scholarship player this coming fall. But I mean, I just, the reluctance to go to the portal at that position is startling. And when I heard that Wisconsin was pursuing Williams, I just thought that's an indictment. It's an indictment on Iowa, Mark, because they had better play than Iowa. They had just as good of a defense as Iowa. Probably not quite as good special teams. That might have been why they lost one more game than Iowa in the regular season. So, but the fact of the matter is they were willing to go out there and pursue, and they weren't worried about it being leaked. Like it again, it's not. They weren't worried that it's going to hurt Graham Mertz's feelings. It is what it is, and my guess is Graham Mertz will be their starting quarterback in 2022.
So Ken O'Keefe came back to Iowa after a stint in the NFL in 2017. So this has been 5 football seasons for him at Iowa.
And what have we seen? Have we seen Nate Stanley grow? I mean, Nate Stanley, I don't remember the quote. There was somebody with Minnesota that made the statement when Nate Stanley was drafted by the Vikings. And of course, he hasn't really played. He's been on the practice squad a lot. But there was a statement made by somebody at Minnesota that basically Nate Stanley did not have good mechanics at all. And that's a concern because, like, again, Ken O'Keefe was quarterback's coach during, I believe, all of Nate Stanley's. When did you say Ken O'Keefe was rehired? Was that 17?
Yes.
So his entire career as a starter, and to say he doesn't have good mechanics, I mean, what are we? I mean, good mechanics, Mark. I just don't get. That's like, again, what the foundation of being a NFL or Big Ten quarterback should lie on. So, you know, and what have we seen from Spencer Petras? Have we seen vast improvement? Alex Padilla has been in the program 3 years. He wasn't great last year. You know, I mean, or excuse me, 2 years. I believe this is year 3 for him. The point is, we have not seen any real development from those guys. And again, when you are solely a quarterback's coach, I don't know what excuse can you make, Mark? What's the excuse that Ken O'Keefe can make, or that Kirk can make for Ken O'Keefe?
So for me, in evaluating these coaches, you basically take what was our production at that position, or if it's an offensive coordinator, what was the production before for the entire offense before they came on board, and then make those comparisons. At least it starts there. I don't think that's the end of it. And you say, okay, we had the 50th best offense last year. Now we've got the 70th best offense. So you're horrible. You're fired. No, that you have to look into personnel changes, additions and subtractions and injuries and opponents. Did we play a tougher schedule this year? All those things have to be taken into consideration. But for after 5 years, if they have consistently, and you read off the offensive rankings for this team going through the entire tenure of Kirk, and it just hasn't improved. And so it's been pretty consistently drab during these 5 years. So that's a direct reflection on the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach.
And again, Ken O'Keefe is the highest paid quarterback's coach in the country. So, I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I have been very careful about, I don't want people to think I'm calling for people's jobs. Not that it matters. Nobody cares what I have to say about the subject, Mark, but I've kind of had it with the quarterback. You know, I like Ken. He's been a part of this program for a long time. He was the OC here forever. He's back now as a quarterback's coach, but how long are you just going to continue to say, well, he's been loyal to the program and, you know, he's a good friend of Kirk and, you know, he loves Iowa and like that. I'm tired of saying, you just can't say it anymore. It's just, it just isn't working. So I don't know when you call it quits. I think the fact of the matter is Kirk probably will not. I think it'll probably be a situation where Ken retires before Kirk Ferentz does. Maybe not. Maybe he'll retire at the same time. But if that happens, you're not going to see very good quarterback play, I don't believe, in the coming seasons. Even if Marco Lainez is really good, you have to be able to develop quarterbacks at this level, Mark. Nobody in high school, unless you're getting Trevor Lawrence, perhaps, or Andrew Luck, or someone who's almost NFL ready out of high school. You have to be able to develop these guys to win championships at this level, and it's not happening right now under this staff. And it's also Brian Ferentz. It's not just Ken O'Keefe. But if we're not gonna look at Brian Ferentz and say, you know, maybe it's time for him to move on, I know a lot of fans want that, but if you're not going to do that, if you're Iowa, then you have to look. You have to go somewhere. Something has to change there because development's not occurring.
I wonder when the last time Iowa fired a position or a coordinator, a position coach or a coordinator. When the last time, because
That's a great question, Mark.
Going with our theme, basically, if you gain a position at Iowa, whether that's as a player or a coach, then if you're a player, you're competing for your position and those decisions are made. Or if you're the coach on the coaching staff, then it seems as though you have the only churn is those people that decide to leave. It sounds like.
It's a good question. I'm going to go do some research, Mark, because I have no idea. Everybody's left. Like Lester Erb left voluntarily, I recall. Obviously, Reese Morgan retired. Aaron Hernandez's brother was on the staff, and he left after what happened with Aaron, unfortunately. Yeah. I'm just trying to think. Ken O'Keefe left for the NFL. Greg Davis retired. Although Greg Davis, I think he wasn't fired, Mark, but Greg Davis, I think, was sort of a stopgap for Iowa. I don't think they ever expected him to be here long term. So who knows if he were younger, maybe he would have been. I mean, I don't think he would have been let go either because they won 12 games and 15 with Greg Davis. That's a great question. Michael, I see Michael's comment here in the chat. They did not fire Greg Davis. I believe he resigned / retired so I know fans wanted him gone, but that's a great question, Mark. I'll have to, obviously Norm Parker retired, rightfully so. I mean, he should have never been let go. He was great, but it's a great question.
You could make parallels between Ohio State's defense and Iowa's offense this past season. And actually, if you just want to go by statistical measurement, the Ohio State defense was considered a disaster, but statistically it was better than Iowa's offense. It wasn't 100th in the country.
Right.
And they they cleaned house.
I know.
Except for the defensive line coach. Bye.
I know.
Yeah.
I keep hearing Iowa media people, and it's not everybody. I'm not going to say any names, but I've heard a media person or two say, they're not going to fire Brian Ferentz after winning 12 games. What does that have to do with anything? Like, that's a 3-phase game, Mark. Why are we basing our decisions? Again, well, maybe they do it at Ohio State. They're not going to do it at Iowa. Okay, then if they're not going to do it at Iowa, then isn't that a problem, Mark? Like, should the number of wins you get ever dictate whether a position coach should be retained or not? No, absolutely not. It's a 3-phase game.
Yeah, I like you. I'm not calling for people to get fired. It's just these. Okay, we're talking about big-time college football. We're talking about a top 15 to 20 program in the country. We're talking marquee names and brands here and people that are being paid a lot of money to be excellent at their jobs. And the season or the year that they're not excellent, they shouldn't just automatically get fired, or the results of their work. That doesn't mean that they weren't excellent. Things don't work out sometimes. You do have to play scholarship athletes on the other side. I understand all that, of course. So it doesn't always work out. Hard work and doing the excellent work doesn't always reap immediate results and success. But 5 football seasons, it should.
Yeah. I mean, again, and it's exclusively what he's in charge of. So I know I'm not completely well educated on this, so I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm not calling for him to be fired, but I do think it's time to look at that position and look at the staff and say, what do we do here? Because it's not working. And I will say this, I sit here and I think, what's happening every day at practice, Mark? Every day when Ken O'Keefe comes in to work with these quarterbacks, and he's working with Alex Padilla, Spencer Petras, Joey Labus. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not being I want to know I would love to be there. I would love to be there for it and just to see what's happening. Because wouldn't you think if you're, and I no doubt they're working. I'm not trying to say that they're just sitting on their bums, but I mean, I just don't see, like we just brought out, I just don't see steady development. And again, maybe I could see a situation where if Brian Ferentz, or your OC, is the quarterback's coach and he's working and he's sort of maybe over micromanaging his position coaches, maybe he's neglecting the quarterback position. But how could Ken O'Keefe be neglecting the quarterback position? That's the only position he runs, he coaches. So I don't know. That's a good question. I would love to be able to be there for a day and see. I do want to address this, Mark. I see Dennis Hattie's question about the athletic department's financial issues. So, according to Scott Docterman, I did see this. Scott Docterman of The Athletic tweeted out that Iowa was third in fiscal 2021 losses as far as the athletic departments are concerned. So Ohio State lost over $63 million in 2021, Michigan at $48 million, Iowa at $42 million. And there's a big gap between them and Rutgers. Rutgers sits at 31, Indiana 24, and then everybody's a lot tighter. Somehow Illinois only lost $3.2 million. So I don't really know how I feel about that, because I guess I'd have to look back at the athletic budget. I know Iowa, of course, cut some sports here, a year ago, just added women's wrestling. So I just don't know. I don't know how significant that is. My recollection is that, obviously, these coaches are getting raises. I don't know when the last raise was administered to. I know some of them took pay cuts a year ago, and everybody got up in arms because Kirk Ferentz didn't. Even though he'd given $1 million like the year before to the Stead Family Children's Hospital. But I don't really know how it affects football. I mean, that's where all the money lies. So if anything, they're going to keep paying. Obviously, they increased Kirk Ferentz's salary here recently, Mark. So I just don't know how significant it is. I feel bad for the sports that it's affecting, the sports that it's already affected. It's just unfortunate. I feel terrible for those kids. And I'll say this. I'm not an expert on Iowa athletics everywhere, but I will say this. I would have to think it'd be disconcerting for some of these athletes that came here. Their sport gets cut, and less than a year later, Iowa adds another sport. I would think that'd be kind of a gut punch. So it's just unfortunate. And I think, I don't know that Gary Barta has maybe handled, from what I understand, those sport cuts, that he didn't handle the situation maybe like you'd expect your AD to handle it. And that's unfortunate.
I want to make sure that we're not keeping you too long. And I also want to make sure that people are understanding of where you're going to be tomorrow for National Signing Day, so they can catch you live. Yep.
So we'll be over at the From the Hawkeye of the Storm channel, 3 p.m. Central Time. We'll talk about Deshaun Lee, and again, maybe there'll be some surprising news, but at the least we'll be on for an hour, talk Hawkeye football, and take calls. So the call line will be open. We'll also release some cut up segments of our conversation with Deshaun Lee, and kind of a preliminary breakdown from myself. Again, I'm exposed to very little tape from Deshaun, but just from what I note on his highlight film. So we'll release that over this channel, Iowa, the Voice of College Football, tomorrow. And then, of course, we'll release our podcast tonight. So our full conversation with Deshaun Lee, and also some information on Iowa hoops. People are down after Iowa's loss last night to Penn State. I talk on the show about how Iowa, I think, still has an excellent chance at making the NCAA tournament. I believe they will. And I kind of break down the schedule remaining and why I believe they will. And then, of course, Thursday, right back on the hardwood for Iowa, Ohio State, in a game that has gained a lot more meaning now for Iowa. It'd be great if they could steal it. We'll be live with Coach Close following that game over at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. So the bottom line is, Mark, we can talk about what content's going to be on what channel. People just need to subscribe to this channel. They need to subscribe to From the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube, and then turn notifications on for both. That way it doesn't matter what channel it's on, Mark, because they'll have it all.
From the Hawkeye of the Storm. It's right on the banner there. So head on over there and just subscribe. Hit that bell for the notifications to know when Corey's going live and uploading new content. And right here at the Voice of College Football, Iowa. For you Iowa fans who want to know about the enemy, we are talking Nebraska football in about 20 minutes on the Nebraska channel. We go live in about 20 minutes on the Nebraska channel. We've got a full National Signing Day lined up with Michigan, Florida State, Miami, Oklahoma shows on those respective channels. And if anything happens during the day that I find noteworthy, I may go live or just post segments on particular signings.
And two things before we go off. First thing is, I apologize to all the Packer fans if I offended them. I don't like Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's going to be your quarterback next year, so I'll become more of a Packer fan next year with Jordan Love. I like Love a lot, for the record. I will say this. We missed the super chat, Mark, so let me throw this up here from Erica.
Absolutely. Sorry, Erica. We don't like missing those. Can you read
Why isn't Labus ever in the conversation? Not saying he's the answer. Don't know if he is because never seen him play, but why not try? I just want to see him in spring, Erica. I'll be happy to talk about it. I want to see him in spring because we've heard, I know people who were hyping Spencer Petras up like crazy before 2020, Mark. Like literally heard people who you would think are in the know that were saying he is better. He's more accurate than Nate Stanley. This dude's going to light the world on fire. He broke all of Jared Goff's high school records. This guy's going to be great. And he's had his moments, but would you say Spencer Petras has been great?
No.
I would not either.
Great.
I'm not trying to insult him. No. He just hasn't. So, I hear a lot of hype around Labus, Erica, but let's just see what happens in the spring. I hope to get to this open spring practice. Perhaps they'll have two this. I don't know what that's a good question. I don't know what the plan is for spring football. I'm assuming they'll have an open game in Iowa City, and I don't know that. I don't think they're doing the Des Moines game anymore. But that's the guy I'll be watching the most, and certainly Xavier Wampa and the early enrollees will be intriguing as well. I just want to see improvement, Mark. And last year, even during spring, I remember talking with Tom Kakert of Rivals, and we both observed, and he was, of course, involved a lot more than I was covering the sport there in Iowa City, but we didn't see much as far as a jump from Spencer that last spring. So we weren't really instilled with a lot of confidence that there would be a big jump. So I would say if we don't see a jump towards the end of spring practice this year, we're probably not going to see a jump this fall.
The quarterback play in the Big Ten should be exceptional this year. Hardly anyone loses a starting quarterback.
Yeah, you've got Aiden O'Connell coming back. You've got Tanner Morgan coming back. And they need better quarterback play because the Big Ten did not have great quarterback play this year, minus C.J. Stroud. Now, Mertz needs to get better. Whoever plays at Iowa needs to get better. And, Casey Thompson is an intriguing one if he ends up winning the job at Nebraska, which I anticipate he will. That's an intriguing one. It'll be interesting. I also think it's going to be interesting to see what Iowa State does because Iowa gets them early and without Brock Purdy. But it seems like it's been forever since Iowa faced a Purdy-less Iowa State Cyclone team. So I'm looking forward to it. Only 6 months away, Mark.
With that much knowledge about Big Ten quarterback play, with just basically, I'm searching through the Big Ten and thinking, okay, Michael Penix, Indiana's gone to Washington. Other than that, there are very few quarterbacks. I can't think of another one. Northwestern's going to have a different, the top 10 quarterbacks are still in play basically in the Big Ten. We should rank Big Ten quarterbacks here in the next sometime before spring practice.
You and me should?
We should, yes.
Okay.
Each one of us.
Oh gosh,
that's we can bring them together.
That's going to be putting some major pressure on me. But yeah, that's fine. And I will say this. You brought up Indiana losing Penix. You know who they got? Connor Bazelak from Mizzou.
Yeah.
He was a co-SEC freshman of the year a little over a year ago. So get Iowa offered. I wanted Iowa to go after him. Indiana gets him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him. I would guess he will win that starting job. And I don't know what Indiana's personnel. I don't know if you looked at talent ratings yet for next year, Mark, but I don't know what to make of Indiana moving forward. Obviously they had a lot of injury issues this year, but it'll be interesting to see what Tom Allen can do there because he hasn't really done it in a non-COVID setting. So assuming, I think things are normal this fall, it'll be interesting to see what he can do with a new quarterback.
Yeah. They did have an 8-5 year the season before.
Okay. Yeah. And trying to think who they played in that bowl. I do remember the bowl game.
They lost to Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah.
They had a 2-touchdown lead, blew it.
Right, I remember that.
By a point.
Yeah, no, I like Bazelak for the record. I think you're right with Stroud, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Michigan's quarterback. I mean, is it McNamara? I mean, I guess it's a question, right? I think you talk to different Michigan fans, you're going to probably get a different response. But yeah, a lot of experience coming back.
Yeah, ton of stability compared to the other conferences at quarterback.
Absolutely.
All right, Corey, we appreciate it. Everybody lock in on From the Hawkeye of the Storm. Join Corey specifically tomorrow at 3 Central on From the Hawkeye of the Storm for your National Signing Day coverage live. And we will see you all back here next Tuesday at 4:30 Central.
Mark, go Pack, go.